Hello friends, we're back again to do a sort of unscientific test. Well, it's kind of scientific, but not really. We're going to be comparing GPS accuracy between some of these newer Garmin watches, like the Garmin Fenix 7 and Epix Gen 2, against some of the older Garmin watches, like the Garmin Fenix 6 and the newer Garmin Instinct 2. So there's a lot to cover here. Stick around, let's get into it. Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dave from Chase the Summit, and today we're going to be getting a little bit nerdy, just something I do often here, but today it gets pretty in-depth. Today we're going to be comparing GPS accuracy coming out of the latest and greatest Garmin watches. So we've got the Garmin Fenix 7 all the way on the right here. This is the Sapphire 7X. Next to that, I've got the Epix Gen 2, which is also a Sapphire model. Then we've got the Garmin Instinct 2 Solar here. And then next to that, I have the older Garmin Fenix 6. And the reason why I chose these watches in particular to compare is because the Epix Gen 2 and the Fenix 7 have the latest GPS technology with multi-band GPS mode, which essentially means they've got a special chip inside that allows them to communicate with more satellites at a given time. I am grossly oversimplifying that, but it's essentially the gold standard for GPS or GNSS technology right now. And then the Garmin Fenix 6 and the Instinct 2 Solar use the older GPS technology, which essentially allows you to communicate with one or two satellite systems at a given time. So it's not quite as robust as these newer watches, but it's still pretty good. And that's what we're going to analyze in today's video. And like I said, this is not very scientific. This is a very unscripted video. I'm basically shooting from the hip. We're going to go through some activities I've done with all of these watches simultaneously and see how they stack up in terms of accuracy in my simplified test setup here. Before we dive into all of the data here, if you find this kind of video interesting or fun, make sure you give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel down below so you don't miss more videos like this in the future. And also, if you're interested in picking up any of the watches shown in this video, I'll have them linked in the description down below, and those links do help support my channel, so use them. I would enjoy that. Okay, so let me just explain the test setup here. All of the testing I'm going to show you was done during a run, not a bike ride and not a canoe paddle. I don't know why I said that, but all of it was done with running. You get the idea. And in these runs, I tried to go out on different kind of days. So there's a couple of days where I went on road runs where it was nice and sunny out, good conditions. Then there were a couple of days when I went out on a trail run with heavy tree cover and lots of clouds and bad weather and stuff. So I tried to get a variety of conditions. Okay, the first test that we're looking at here is a 10-mile long road run. And this road run was done in pretty good conditions. It was nice and sunny out, good weather. So what we're looking at here is the Garmin Fenix 7X in orange, the Garmin Epix Gen 2 in blue, and the Garmin Instinct 2 Solar in red. And the Garmin Fenix 7X in this example was in GPS only mode, which is the least accurate mode on that watch. The Garmin Epix Gen 2 was in the most accurate mode, or multi-band GPS mode. And then the Garmin Instinct 2 was set to its default settings, which is GPS plus GLONASS. For the purpose of this run, I was very intentional, so I knew I'd be testing these GPS devices. So what I did was I did a bunch of out and backs throughout these 10-mile course here. The nice thing about out and backs is it's a good indicator of good GPS accuracy, because ideally, if you're retracing your steps, your track should land right on top of each other. So the first example I want to show you is this little out and back I did in this apartment complex near my house. So basically I ran down the road and turned around and went right back, retracing my steps exactly. You can see here that the orange track is probably the worst off here. It's showing the left side of that track looks more accurate than the right side of that track. I went out and back on the same side of the road, so the orange track on the right seems a little bit drifty, a little bit more inaccurate. If we look at the blue track here, that's definitely doing the best job of the bunch, and that's because the blue track is right on top of itself, and really that is as good as GPS accuracy as you could ask for. Now, if you look at the red track, it's kind of in between the orange track and the blue track in terms of accuracy. It's definitely not the best, definitely not the worst. Now let's look at another stretch of road here. This is another out and back. Again, the blue line is definitely the most accurate here, and at some points you can't even tell that there's actually an out and back there because the blue line's really right on top of itself. And just for one more example in this first run, I want to show you where I turned around at one point because it's kind of interesting. You can see all of the tracks coming around the corner there, and then there's one point where I pull into this little side road, and that's where I decided to turn back and add my out and back there. You can see again the Epix Gen 2 in blue. absolutely the most accurate of the bunch. Oddly though, the Garmin Fenix 7X looks to be a little bit tighter at the end of that out and back where it turns around and goes back on itself. Okay, now I want to take a look at some corners. Another indicator of good GPS accuracy is typically a nice tight corner. So here we're looking at the same colors. I'm not going to say them again because you can see them in the corner of the screen. And here again, you can see that the Garmin Epix Gen 2 and the Instinct Solar, the blue and red tracks there, seem to be pulling the corner here a little bit more accurately than that orange track. And here we have another corner to look at. And again, the Garmin Epix 2 and the Instinct 2 Solar seem to be doing a better job here because I was on the left side of the road before the turn. I kind of transferred over diagonally and then I continued my run on the left-hand side of the road again. And here you can see that the Garmin Fenix 7X is actually showing its track on the right-hand side of the road. Now that we've talked about road running, I think that's getting a little bit boring to analyze. Let's look at a more challenging situation. And what you're looking at here is a 10-mile trail run on my local trails. And I did a whole bunch of out and backs again to get an idea of GPS accuracy in the woods with heavy tree cover. And on this particular day, it was actually pretty crappy weather. There was a bunch of clouds. It was actually snowing a little bit. So I think this is a good idea of a challenging situation. All right, so first I want to focus on an out and back I did here on the Skyline Trail. You can see the trail marker there. I know Google Maps, their trails aren't absolutely perfect, but this is a much better view than just looking at the satellite view because you can't actually see the trail in the trees. So if we look here, you can see that both watches indicate that I took a turn onto this trail, except you can see that blue track again is right on top of itself. And really, this is super impressive for a GPS watch in terms of GPS accuracy. I've never seen this kind of track from any wearable technology from any watch I've worn out on GPS tests like this. Usually, they look more like that orange track, which is still acceptable, but that Epix Gen 2 track is really looking pretty solid. Now I want to show you another challenging situation for GPS watches. And up on this hill during this trail run, there's a big tower. I think it's a water tower or something like that. And it's a big concrete structure. So that would probably get in the way of most GPS watches. I kind of ran around the perimeter of that just to get an idea of how these watches would react to that kind of situation. And as you can see, both of them did a pretty good job. Again, the Epix Gen 2 definitely looks like it's a bit more accurate. The tracks are almost right on top of themselves again, but that orange track is still doing a pretty good job as well. I'd be happy with either one of these. Here's one more area during this trail run I wanted to look at for the purpose of this video. Here's this big field. It's actually a dog park, and the trail I was running on actually runs along the perimeter of this field, as you can see here. So if we zoom all the way in, you can actually see the trail. It's kind of faint there. But if you look closely, the blue line, which is the Garmin Epix Gen 2 with multi-band GPS mode turned on, you can see that it's landing right on the trail. I mean, it couldn't get any closer to the trail. That's exactly where I ran during this run. So pretty impressive there. But as you can see, the Instinct 2 Solar in GPS plus GLONASS mode is a little bit off. It's out in the middle of the field there. Again, if I weren't comparing the two, I wouldn't be upset by this because it's within reason. That's about, I don't know, 30 or 40 feet off. Not the worst. But that blue line from the Epix Gen 2 is genuinely really impressive. And finally, I want to show you one more example of a GPS track before you get too bored, and that's going to be the Garmin Fenix 6 using GPS plus GLONASS against the Garmin Fenix 7X using the standard GPS mode, which is called All Systems. So this comparison assumes you bought a Garmin Fenix 6 and a Garmin Fenix 7, you took them out of the box and you went for your run because these are default settings. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the Garmin Fenix 7X in All Systems mode in pink, and then the Garmin Fenix 6 in GPS plus GLONASS in blue. So right off the bat, you can see that they're both pretty similar, surprisingly. But as we pan around a little bit, you can see that the pink track is closer to being on top of itself. And again, this is an out and back course, and that's what we're looking for. And as I pan down even further, you can see that there is more drifting on the blue track, which is the Garmin Fenix 6. Down here, we do see a pretty big drift that goes into someone's front lawn here. And then down at the end here where I turn around for the out and back, they're both pretty close right there. Zooming into a couple of corner examples, you can see the Garmin Fenix 6 here actually appears to be a little bit more accurate. That blue track follows the sidewalk where I actually ran around the corner where this gas station is. Scrolling down further, you can see that there are more trees around me where I was running here. And in this situation, the Garmin Fenix 6 actually lost the GPS signal pretty bad and drifted off to the other side of the road, where the Fenix 7 stayed right where it should be on the sidewalk on the side of this road. Okay, without boring you to death, I'm gonna cut off my example runs there, and let's talk about what this data actually tells us, which is kind of not much because, again, this is not a very scientific experiment. I'm just sharing some runs I did with all these devices to get an idea of their general GPS accuracy. So at a glance, it definitely appears that the Garmin Fenix 7 and the Epix Gen 2 do have a pretty big advantage when it comes to GPS accuracy, especially when you're in that multi-band GPS mode. But interestingly enough, even in that base GPS mode or all systems mode, they seem to be way more accurate than the Garmin Instinct 2 and the Fenix 6 Sapphire, which is pretty interesting to me. What I think's happening here is that Garmin is actually using an entirely different GPS chip inside the watch, which is increasing the accuracy in all of the modes, despite having that new dual frequency or multi-band mode. All of the modes seem to be just a little bit more accurate now. And another thing I took away from this experiment is that the Garmin Instinct 2 Solar, despite having the older technology in terms of GPS, is still pretty accurate, and it's definitely a step up from the Garmin Fenix 6, which is pretty interesting to me. At the end of the day though, honestly, if you had any of these watches and you weren't comparing them side by side like I am in this video, you'd be hard pressed to tell a difference, and I think you'll still get the training benefit and motivation and all the stuff you get out of these watches despite not having the most accurate GPS watch. Any of these watches will do the job, and I'm just trying to show you which one seems to have a slight edge in terms of GPS accuracy. Okay folks, we've run to the end of this video and I've been talking for a long time. That's all I've got for this one. Just a quick little video to share my thoughts on the GPS accuracy between these four watches. And if you've got any thoughts or you've been trying out a Garmin Fenix 7 or Fenix 6 or Instinct, let me know in the comments down below how your experience has been so far with GPS accuracy. I would love to hear from you. Once again, if you found this video helpful or entertaining or fun or anything, make sure you give me a thumbs up and subscribe down below because that really helps me out. And if you're picking any of these watches up, make sure you check out the links down below because they help support my channel and they cost nothing extra to you. So use them. Okay, that's all I've got for this one. Thanks for watching. Bye.